Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I want to extend a special welcome tonight to Linda DeMoit and to Tara Bartholomew, who are with us from two organizations that are going to share with us the work that they do. And it is work which we have supported for many years. So we're really happy and proud to have them with us tonight. As we begin, I want to start open with a prayer. This weekend, Monday is President's Day. And today and tomorrow in our nation, in the nation's capital, has been a very, very difficult time of confronting the terrible insurrection that took place, that threatened and took lives, and really has set our government in a bad place. And I want to offer a prayer that was offered in 1789 at the time of the inauguration of George Washington. And it was offered by Archbishop John Carroll, who was the one of the first bishops in the United States. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Almighty and eternal God, you have revealed your glory to all nations. God of power and might, wisdom and justice, through you authority is rightly administered, laws are enacted, and judgment is decreed. Assist with your spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people over whom he presides. May he encourage due respect for virtue and religion. May he execute the laws with justice and mercy. May he seek to restrain crime, vice, and immorality. Let the light of your divine wisdom direct the deliberations of Congress and shine forth in all the proceedings and laws framed for our rule and government. May they seek to preserve peace, promote national happiness, and continue to bring us the blessings of liberty and equality. We likewise commend to your unbounded mercy all citizens of the United States, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your holy law. May we be preserved in union and that peace which the world cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, be admitted to those which are eternal. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. For the last several years, I've been able to attend the annual luncheon for STAND. I attended at the invitation of Joe Mullen from our parish. And what I didn't know at the time was that Joe's wife, Raleigh, was the one woman who founded STAND many years ago. And hopefully we'll hear from Linda some of the history of STAND. It's STAND for Families Free of Violence. And at those luncheons, which had hundreds of people attending at one of the hotel ballrooms in Concord, many civil officials were there from local governments. Many police officers were there, and many supporters of STAND. And the luncheons that I attended, I heard some of the most moving and powerful testimonies from women who were able to be extricated from violent domestic situations. So I was personally inspired at those times, and I'm glad to have Linda with us tonight representing STAND. So Linda, if you'll unmute yourself, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, actually, our shelter is named after Raleigh. Thank you. So let me start here. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to see you, but can you all see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
So click your share screen at the bottom.
yes, sir, I did.
Okay.
Let me see what I'm doing here. Share screen.
And then you got to click again on the blue.
Share.
Oh, there you go.
All
Now,
right.
now we can see it.
Now you can see it?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Now you can see it?
Yep, for
All
sure.
right. Thank you. So thank you for having me tonight as a speaker for Stand for Families Free of Violence. I am Linda DeMoy, and I am a volunteer with Stand. So we're going to spend a little time this evening talking about family violence and an overview of Stand program and services. First of all, the reality is 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience relationship violence. If you add in the LGBTQ population, as well as the disabled population, those numbers are even increased. 1 in 5 teens will experience teen dating violence. If you add in cyber harassment, emotional abuse, and the other types of abuse besides physical violence, this number increases to 1 in 3. There are 5 million children in the United States who live in homes where violence occurs. So with these numbers, you can see what an impact it is and how this issue touches all of us. I want to take a minute and just say that because of these numbers, there is a possibility that someone in the audience tonight may have experienced violence in a relationship or know someone that did or has been. And therefore, this can be a very difficult discussion or talk or subject. So if you need to take time away and just kind of get distracted for a while, please take care of yourself in that aspect. So first of all, we want to start with what the definition of family violence is. And I didn't check with Sandy before we started, but I did want to just encourage for some of these things some interaction. So if anybody can tell me what it means to learn something, what does that mean to people?
Well, we're all muted, but
So, okay, so if something is learned, normally it would be something that was taught, something that was experienced or observed. And so we want to say that if something is learned, it can be unlearned or learned differently. So for instance, if a child is taught how to tie their shoes by one person and someone else teaches that child to tie their shoes a different way, that first way of tying their shoes can be changed and learned a different way of doing things. It's a learned range of behaviors. So this may be something such as verbal abuse. It could be emotional or psychological abuse. It can be physical abuse. It could be many different types of abuse. And so it's a learned range of behaviors used in a pattern over time. So it's not a one-time thing. It's something that people use as a pattern over time to establish power and control over the other individual. So we know that there's always power and issues in a relationship. Every relationship isn't perfect, but this is specifically used to establish power and control over the other individual. So what does violence look like? Many times we think of violence as just the physical part, meaning somebody hits somebody, somebody punches somebody, or does something physically, but there's many different types of abuse that we look at. And these are just some basic categories of abuse. So the physical can be throwing objects at the other person, even if it doesn't hit that person. It can be driving recklessly as a threat to the other person. It can be withdrawing of intimacy to say, you know, if you don't do this for me, I won't do this for you, and not allowing somebody to sleep, and doing various types of things besides just the hitting or the punching or the kicking. Verbal can be name calling, it can be intimidating, belittling, saying you can't do anything right. I don't know why I'm with you. You don't do the things you're supposed to do anyway, and threats against that person. And then there's emotional or psychological abuse. So this can be minimizing, blaming, or denying. Like, I don't know why you're saying I did that. I didn't do anything like that. If you wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have had to do this to you, and causing that other person to think it's something they did wrong. It could also be something as a threat to their family or children. If you don't do this with me or do this for me, you know, you can't see your family, or you can't spend any time with your family, or I'll threaten your family, or threaten the children. And there's also something called gaslighting. So gaslighting is a situation where the person who is causing harm makes the other person feel like they're going crazy. For example, there's a couple that the woman kept on telling the man that he wasn't any good, he was just useless, he wouldn't go to work, he didn't do anything he was supposed to do, he wasn't responsible. And then he would get a job, he would try to go to work, he would end up not being able to go to work because he didn't have any transportation because he couldn't find his keys, or he would be late for work because he couldn't find his keys. And in the end, he discovered that he couldn't find his keys because it wasn't because he was lacking his ability or being irresponsible. It was because she was hiding the keys from him and keeping him from going to work and making him think that it was his problem, that he was the one that was being irresponsible, and that was why he wasn't any good. Economic abuse, it could be anything related to financial manipulation. It could be a situation where somebody takes the person's passwords to their bank accounts, or changes their password so that they can't access their accounts, but that person can. It can also be to the extent of not allowing someone to go to school to better themselves to get a good job, or not allowing them to go to work, or the opposite, making them go to work and then telling them when they come home they have to give that person their paycheck, so they have nothing, no funds. The person that is holding the power and control over it has the money. It could also be something as far as spiritual abuse. So something which, you know, making a person convert to this other person's way of thinking or their way of religion, or using scripture to rationalize what they're doing, saying, well, the scripture says you have to do this, that, or the other thing for me because I'm the head of the household and I'm the man and I'm supposed to do this and you're supposed to do this. So using religion or spirituality as a power or control over that individual. Stalking is tied into the hunting behavior that animals do, or so it's a situation where they may have put a GPS tracker on the person's car. Or I have a friend who, she found out that her boyfriend had put a recording device inside her car so that when she was talking on her Bluetooth on her phone, he could hear all the conversations, know exactly who she was speaking to. Or if she had someone else in her car, he could know who was in her car with her, and you know what they were doing and where they were going, and those type of things. Cyber harassment can be anywhere from posting some negative comment on social media to posting, you know, obscene photos of that person, making online threats, and that again many times is linked to stalking as well. And then sexual abuse can be anything from the point of, you know, any sexual activity that is not consented to. Marital rape, of course, is a crime in all 50 of our states. And it could also be refusal of intimacy, like I had mentioned earlier. Well, if you don't do this for me, I'm not going to make love to you. So these are all things that are, again, the whole reason behind them is power and control over the individual. So I think by email, you probably all got a copy of this. I think Sandy sent it out to you guys. And this just kind of shows the power and control wheel. And it kind of has the categories that we went over: using coercion and threats, using intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing, denying, and blaming, using the children, using economic abuse. And also we kind of pulled out of this that isn't talked about many times is using privilege. So any privileged identity that can be used as a tactic of control. So male privilege, treating the other person as a servant because that's the man of the house, or making the decisions about the whole family without impact from the other or input from the other individual. And then even able-bodied privilege, controlling access to care, meds, and mobility on somebody or over someone who is disabled. It could be the situation like elder abuse, where a person is caring for their parent and they deny them access to the needs that they have. So we look at the cycle of violence, and the cycle of violence talks about what occurs in a relationship. And to begin with, if you're in a new relationship, everything is kind of fun and positive, and you're getting to know the other individual, and they're getting to know you, and everybody's kind of on their best behavior, and everything is positive. And there may be gifts, there may be cards, there may be activities to go to together to have fun. And then, as we know in life in general, there's stressors or tension. And if this individual doesn't really know what to do with that stress or tension, that tension builds up or that stress builds up. And because it's a learned behavior, they've learned by example or from whatever reason that many times how to deal with that tension or that stress is by violence, whether it be the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, physical abuse, or those other things that we spoke about. So, after that happens, that person may apologize and say, this is never going to happen again. I'm sorry. I love you. I wouldn't do this if, I wasn't having all this tension in my life. And then that makes the person who received that negative, that abuse or that violence, think that there is positivity in their relationship, and they love that person. And so they want to believe that it's never going to happen again. Well, again, tension happens, stress happens. So many times when the person may increase from verbal abuse to physical abuse to more severe things, as well as that violence may become more frequent. So we see this cycle happen where it keeps going round and round. And many times what happens is that the violence becomes more severe, becomes more frequent, to the point where it may have been once every couple months. Now it's once a month, or maybe increased every week or every day or multiple times a day. So we do see that many times this cycle of violence intensifies. And we do know that many times people, or the average of people leaving a relationship such as this, many times people, or the average is that people try to leave 7 times before they actually leave. And so that might mean that somebody tries to leave once and they're gone and they're done with it. Other people may try to leave, 100 times. So the average is 7 times. So many times we hear the question, why don't they just leave? Why don't they get out the very first time this happens? And we find that many times there's multiple reasons, and these are just a few, even though there's a lot on this page, these are just a few. And many times the reason they don't leave is tied into the abuse to begin with. So if it's a person who has heard over and over again that they're not worth anything, that they can't go to see their friends or families, they don't have the support they want or need, they become financially dependent on this other person. Those are the things that are part of the abuse, but those are also things that have been indwelled in them that are also the reasons why they don't leave. So lack of support, threat, if I can't have you, nobody's going to have you. So threat that, something may happen to them, or blame that they did something wrong. And so they're afraid to get out because, this person has said, if I can't love you, nobody else is going to love you. You can't do these things and expect somebody to love you. Or threat of murder. And we know that statistically 70% of domestic violence murders happen after the person has left. So what is STAND doing? STAND's mission statement is stand for family free of violence. It's a catalyst for breaking the multi-generational cycle of violence, promoting safe and strong relationships, and rebuilding lives. STAND is the only comprehensive family violence reduction agency in Contra, Costa County, and serves over 10,000 clients annually. The programs of STAND are basically divided up into 3 different areas. One is prevention, changing the future, intervention, saving lives, and treatment, rebuilding families. Under prevention, changing the future, one of the programs is a YES program, which is Youth Education and Support Services. YES, the goal of YES is to end the cycle of violence from continuing into the next generation. So educating our youth as to what a healthy relationship looks like, what a violent relationship or abusive relationship looks like, so that they can differentiate and know those trigger points. They do this by doing education in our middle and high schools, and those are done by support groups as well as classroom education workshops. So some of the support groups are a situation like expect respect, so they know that they deserve respect in a relationship and should expect that. Another one, promoting gender respect. And one of the classroom workshops is entitled You Never Win with Violence. So teaching that violence is not the way to handle a relationship and the other ways to do that. The program also provides education and support to the adults in the school system. So principals, teachers, counselors all receive education and support around identifying red flags that might be happening in our teens that would help them know how to provide support and how to help that teen know how to deal with that relationship. You all are experiencing the Speakers Bureau tonight. As mentioned, I am part of the Speakers Bureau with Stand for Families Free of Violence. We not only do educational programs like this tonight, but before COVID, we were doing these not by Zoom, but in person. So we would go out to different service groups or entities in the community and provide this education, as well as we do tabling events. So tabling events are many times at community fairs, National Night Out we do in Richmond and in various places throughout the county, as well as in some of the colleges, they do kind of a service day where they have different agencies come and provide a table and education to their population. Under volunteer services, not only do we have the Speakers Bureau and the YES program, but we also have volunteers who man our crisis and counseling line, as well as provide administrative support and shelter support at our shelter. And also the Rainbow Room, which is a children's program, which is housed inside the shelter. Under intervention, saving lives, we do have our crisis line and counseling line, which is the gateway to all services. So it not only is a line for people to call if they're in danger at the time, but it's also a line to contact us as far as other services. So if someone calls, not only do the people answering the phone help them develop a safety plan, but also get them in touch with other services within Stand or within the community. And our crisis line is answered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The phone number is 1-888-215-5555. And the calls are able to be answered in 100 different languages using our language line, in addition to the caller line that we answer. We answer over 14,000 calls in a year through the crisis and counseling line. Also under Saving Lives is our emergency shelter, which is for people in immediate danger. We are able to provide shelter for all genders as well as children. We have 24 beds available to house families and singles for 8 to 12 weeks. We've been able to shelter people, 140 adults and 70 children within 1 year in our emergency shelter. We also have the transitional housing, which is for people or for survivors after the crisis has ended and there's no normal housing available to them at the time. They can be serviced in the transitional housing program for up to 18 months until they can get things together, and then the Stand staff helps them to get into their own housing or residence. We are able to provide this transitional housing for 9 families and 4 singles, and in 1 year service to 12 adults and 18 children. We also have our domestic violence support groups, and these are available in both English and Spanish. Also under the Saving Lives program is our Restraining Order Assistance Clinics. And this is where we have domestic violence liaisons in the community, in the Employment and Human Services Department offices, as well as the Richmond Police Department, Richmond, Martinez, and Antioch courthouses, the Rubicon, Richmond, and Antioch, Kaiser, Antioch, and also the Family Justice Centers. These domestic violence liaisons help the person navigate the process, whether it be to help with restraining orders or other legal help, as well as health and human services. We are able to service 4,000 victims each year under these supportive services, including the support groups and legal advocacy. Under the Rebuilding Families programs, we have our children's counseling program. And as I mentioned earlier in this presentation, 5 million children live in the United States that are experiencing or exposed to violence in their homes. So that proves to us that the children's counseling program is very important. Our children's counseling program is a free program, a free therapy program for any child in Contra Costa County who has been exposed to any type of violence. And this is available to them until they turn 18 or until the therapy is no longer needed. We are able to serve 120 children in a year during the, by use of this program. We also have the parenting support groups. And then we also have our non-violence program, which is a domestic violence 52-week batterers intervention program. And this is many times mandated by the courts, or it can also be a voluntary access to it. This is the only support program within STAN that is a fee-for-service program. So you might say, how can you help? And as you had already mentioned, you guys are already helping. You've supported us in the past. And so other ways is, now that you have some of this information, please, if it's something that would be helpful for yourself, please use it. If you know someone else who may be in a current relationship or in a past relationship that could use the help of STAN, please let them know this information. Share what you've learned tonight. Give by joining our volunteer services program, or give financially or in-kind donation. And any of that information can be accessed through our website, which is www.standffov, which is Stand for Families Free of Violence.org. And also, if you're interested in becoming a volunteer, Gretchen Ellis is our volunteer manager and trainer. And here's her phone number. And again, it can be also accessed through the website. Her number is 925-603-0175. And again, the crisis line, which is the gateway to all these services, is 888-215-5555. Thank you. And I believe we're going to have questions at the end.
Yes, we'll take
right.
some time at the end, but thanks very much, Linda, for really thorough insight into STAND, its programming, and the amazing work that's being done. It's amazing the numbers of people and families that that the organization is able to help.
Yes, thank you.
Mary?
All right. And Linda, are you going to stop sharing?
Yes, I was just looking at how to do that. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know. I like those umbrellas. Those are very pretty. I don't know. Tara, our next speaker, maybe she's going to want those umbrellas up there.
Mary,
I just did it for you, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I
Thank you very much, Linda. That was very powerful. It's just phenomenal how much I learned through that presentation, and it's heartfelt. We appreciate that.
And Mary?
Yes.
I forgot to mention that Linda Gritzer is the liaison from our.
Sandy Gritzer.
Sorry, Sandy Gritzer is our parish liaison to STAN. So thanks, Sandy, for playing that role.
Yes, I was going to mention that if you didn't, Father John. And yes, we will hold your questions, either put them in chat or try to remember them for the end, toward the end, another 15, 20 minutes, and then we can you can feel free to ask questions of Linda and our next speaker, which is Tara Bartholomew from Bay Area Crisis Nursery. And Linda, it is, I mean, Tara, it's so many of us, hold children near and dear to our hearts, and your agency is going to be of interest to many of us, and you play a big role in children's lives. So I will, and our liaison with Bay Area Crisis Nursery is Marge Ho. So I will turn it over to you, Linda. I mean, Tara. Linda was the last one. Tara. You're
Sure.
on. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So hello, everybody. It's good to see all of you tonight. I'm going to do a little, see if I can I am actually I'm on my phone because I was having some connection issues today at my house. Can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for inviting me down here today. And actually, thank you, John, for giving a shout out to Raleigh. Little unknown fact about me is that I went to St. Mary's College. I'm actually from Lafayette, and I volunteered with Raleigh when STAND was still BWA back in the 1990s. I worked in a little home where they did I assisted with a volunteer group of attorneys who would do the restraining orders. And then when the shelter opened up, I worked in the shelter and I tutored children who weren't able to go to school. So that's like a really good time. But then above working at Battered Women's Alternatives, I worked at Family Stress Center. And so I actually worked for the two organizations that merged that are now STAND. And so I worked in fundraising there, but I also ran their parent education program, their STEP program, and their daytime crisis respite childcare program. So it's kind of great. It's always great to see STAND. I never tell that story, so I thought I would tonight, just let all of you know that it's, such a near and dear organization, and definitely an organization that we support, because while STAND really focuses on serving, the families and the parents in the domestic violence situation, we're the ones that, help take care of the children. So we definitely do. So it's great to see you, Linda. Just a little bit about the Bay Area Crisis Nursery. We were founded by Sister Ann Welts. Sister was our leader for 38 years, and she passed this away this September. She was suffering from cancer this past year, and so she did pass in September. And I miss her telling me how to do my job. I'm telling you, I do miss her telling me how to do my job. But hopefully, she's in a better place and she's actually okay with how I'm running things. I don't know. She might still be telling me how to do my job up there. I just can't hear it. I joined the team in March of 2019. So I was with the agency for 1 year before the pandemic hit. And I've been running the agency during the pandemic for the last year. So we didn't, not much had changed before the pandemic. We were just still kind of trotting along, doing what the nursery does. And then when the shelter in place hit, we were told we're an essential service. We were to stay open and fully operational because we are what you call an emergency shelter service. And so, I'm sure STAND's shelters, remained open as well, but we're also a residential care facility. So the state came down and said, the residential care facilities are actually the ones that are spreading COVID right now. And so you are all a very high risk population for us. So it was really kind of this scramble to write, safety plans and to make sure that we were all safe and to get all the PPE we needed. We invested a lot of money in PPE. We continue to do so daily. But above and beyond that, we started getting phone calls from different social workers in the area, parents, couldn't find diapers, couldn't find toilet paper, doors were closed, couldn't buy baby clothes, didn't have food. And these were the calls that we were really getting, more so than, hey, we need emergency shelter services. So what we did was we quickly, got everybody together. Our fundraising team went out, put a call out to our neighborhood and said, hey, listen, we need diapers. We need diapers, we need food, we need clothing. This is what our families need. And we opened up a diaper bank within just a couple of weeks of the shelter in place order. We then partnered with the Contra Costa County Food Bank because we knew that they were having a difficult time getting the food out to everybody that needed it. I mean, again, you're operating in a pandemic. A lot of our volunteers are older. They weren't coming out to work, at the food banks or at the crisis nursery. So we were all really lacking in our volunteer programs. And so we ended up partnering with the Contra Costa County Food Bank, and we are actually a food bank. So the one big thing that happened through the pandemic, which has just been amazing, is, we've given out over 8,000 diapers in the past 9 months. And that's giving packs of 8 diapers out at a time. So that's 1,000 pickups from parents for diapers. And we've given out, 1,000 bags of food. We had this amazing group of farmers. Rather than their food go bad, their fresh vegetables and fruit, they called us up and said, can we do deliveries every week for your families and for people? And so we were having just these big boxes of fresh produce and fruit being delivered every week, and we were just getting everything out the door. So we spent most of the summer, and I think a lot of us nonprofit organizations, Bay Area Crisis Nursery is one of them, but a lot of us right now, we have the services that we offered, but what people need, what parents need, what families need, food, diapers, the toiletries, all those basic necessities that you can't afford to buy if you don't have a job, right? You can't afford to buy if your unemployment runs out. It's those things that people really need, and it's the basics. And that's what we've really grounded ourselves in this last year, providing. Another huge, exciting, and this was always in the plans, but we ended up just doing it during the pandemic as we had. So I had told you that I worked for Family Stress Center. And when I worked for the Family Stress Center, we operated the daytime crisis childcare program for the Contra Costa County. So Family Stress Center was founded in 1978, and the Bay Area Crisis Nursery was founded in 1981. So the founder of Family Stress Center and Sister Ann were very good friends. And Sister came to the Bay Area and asked and started telling everybody that she wanted to build a crisis nursery. She met with the founder of Family Stress Center, who said, that's great if you want to do a 24-hour program. However, I already run the daytime crisis care program, and I do crisis child care services. And so Sister told her, and they kind of made a deal, that's fine. I'll do the overnight respite, residential program. You do the daytime program. And for many years, these two programs referred to each other, and they really worked complementary together. Well, I think it was 2008, 2009, when Family Stress Center and Stand merged, that one program actually was not kept. So it was that Stand closed down that daytime crisis care. And so we're very excited that on October 5th, we launched the daytime crisis childcare program at Family Stress Center, at the Bay Area Crisis Nursery. So now we actually offer free childcare for up to 30 days for any family that needs it, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at night. So you can use our services for a couple hours, or you can use our services for the full 12 hours. And we really wanted to support the families who were going back to work as we were getting into kind of the purple tier and the orange tier. Some of these restaurants and some of these rural service workers who had been laid off during the summer were getting phone calls saying, hey, we're reopening, but you need to be here next week. Well, can you imagine being a waitress, a single mom with a 2-year-old? You've lost your childcare because you've been at home for 6-7 months. And all of a sudden you're being told by your supervisor, your job's here, but you have to come back. And if you don't come back, you're not going to have your job. And so we wanted to open up our doors because we're able to take those children in the moment. If a parent calls and learns that they have a job the next day, we can take the kids. It's that simple. And we really do give 30 days of free childcare while the parents can then make a longer term childcare arrangement. And our first client who enrolled in the program happened to be a nurse, and she works in Antioch, and she had always worked the emergency room graveyard shift. Her husband worked during the day, she worked during the night. They had 2 young children under 5, and the hospital came to her and said, nope, we need you to actually work in the ICU during the day, because that's where we need people to care for COVID patients. And she had never had childcare, and she called us, and we gave her 20 days of free childcare. And then after 20 days, she actually went back to her regular shift as graveyard. But it felt amazing, you know, during the time of COVID and during the pandemic, to really give back to a nurse who had no other choice, you know, but to come to us. And it was really amazing. So we were excited to welcome her in and her children in as our first clients, and just to support the, you know, essential workers out there, like the nurses who are working so hard for us. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind. There's been times when it's been humbling, it's been scary. You know, we've all been exposed to COVID, and thank goodness nobody in the nursery has come down with it. But, you know, we're getting regularly tested. I have my 10th test tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. You know, so knock on wood that, you know, we'll continue to stay safe. But, you know, it's definitely been, it feels like it's always at our doors. You know, we're constantly getting calls. We work with very high risk clients. And so we are getting calls, you know, hey, hate to tell you, picked up my kids on Friday, tested positive on Monday. You know, it's like, okay. So it's kind of been a really crazy year dealing with all that. And I'm very grateful for everybody who's worked really hard, and to all the doctors and the scientists and nurses who have, you know, cared for all of us. And, you know, I'm grateful that, you know, we're having the opportunity to all get vaccinated, you know, hopefully soon, and hopefully that will help us out. But, you know, that's kind of been our year. So it's probably a little bit different than in most organizations, because we really do sit on the front lines. I know you have a 15-minute Q&A, so I don't want to take up too much time, but I guess I can open it up for questions for everybody.
Tara, what's your staff like? How many, who are they, and what are their specific roles and so on? Who wants all the babies, all the kids?
Yeah, well, we all work with the babies. I actually had to work 2 shifts this weekend. So I worked from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Friday and 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday inside the nursery. And it really was because one of our staff members was exposed to COVID. And so, you know, we're all hands on deck. We're a super small team as far as the administrative team. We have a part-time bookkeeper. We have a program manager. We have myself as executive director. And we have a fundraising team of 1.5. And then we have 16 people who work inside the nursery as childcare staff. And so we have 3 people per shift, 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I mean, we're always open. Yeah. And so even with 3 people, we're still a little short staffed sometimes. So that's why I'll hop in. I work in the nursery. You know, I worked in childcare. I worked in child abuse prevention services for many years. So I like having the kids around. I do have a question. How many children do you care for in a day? So we could have 3 children. We could have 16 children. I mean, that's kind of the part of being a crisis nursery, is that you never know when people are going to be in crisis. We like to average at least 8 to 10 children a day. So what we do is we have our crisis program, and then we also have what's called a respite program, where we give parents like 1 to 3 day breaks. And so what we'll do is, if we don't have a lot of crisis children in, we'll call parents up and see if they need some breaks. And right now, a lot of the children that we're doing breaks for, so a lot of the programs actually had to close because of COVID. Just because you're a social service program doesn't mean that you are an essential program. So one program is the regional center, and they work with mainly children with developmental delays. They go in, they do in-home and in classroom kind of play-based, you know, therapy. And so we've been taking a lot of the children who are on the autism spectrum, and while their day programs are closed, we've been giving the parents some respite. And a lot of those children are really nonverbal. So yeah, we'd like to have at least 8, but we can house up to 20. Do you work with the Costa program? Yes, we do work with the Costa program, especially with transition age youth who now have children. And so transition age youth, well, any parent can bring their child to us. But our children, we try and stay out of the foster care system. So it's usually foster care who have become parents. And I don't know if these are all for me, I'm guessing. What ages of children do you serve? Newborn through 5 years old. And we had a 2-day-old in our nursery last month. Their parents' apartment set on fire and they became homeless. And so we've had 1 to 2-day-old infants in the nursery.
And if there are any questions for Linda from Stand, Linda, I wanted to ask you, since the luncheon, fundraising luncheon didn't take place this year, I presume, did you have a virtual fundraiser?
Yes, actually, it was a virtual luncheon in our own homes, of course. But it was actually over two different days. So it was on a Wednesday like it usually is, but a week apart. And they actually had a speaker who has written a book about domestic violence as the keynote speaker the one day. But yeah, it was a virtual fundraiser this year, unfortunately.
And successful?
I haven't heard what the result was.
Uh-huh.
I've got a question for Stan. How do people find out about Stan? Or another way of asking my question, are you challenged by people who don't know how to reach you, don't know you're existing, or is the word pretty much out throughout the whole county? Does everybody know about you?
Well, I that's why we do these type of presentations, is because there's definitely more need out there than people realize we have the services available. So, you know, that's part of why we do the education. And, you know, people don't always know the phone number. So that's why we like to get it out as much as we can in these presentations and in our tabling events. And then hopefully, you know, if people are Googling help for domestic violence, then they find us on the website. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely more need out there than we see people calling us, even though we do get a lot of calls. So that's why we feel it's important to have the opportunity to get out in the community and have these events so that we can educate people and let people know that we're here.
Linda, at the luncheons that I've been to, the fundraising luncheon, there have been a lot of police officers there. And I presume that you get referrals through various agencies like the police. Is that correct? And
definitely. Yes, definitely. And there's actually a number of police departments. Richmond's one of the big ones that we work with, as far as they are able to do. We've developed a lethality assessment that they do at the time that they're called to a site, so that they can evaluate the needs. And that's also, yes, where we get calls to the crisis line if they go to a situation and they find there's somebody who needs the services, and get them in touch with our crisis line.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And you have a question from someone. Have you, from Gina, have you observed an increased need for your services since the shutdown started last year?
So thank you for that question. Interesting enough, we have had less people wanting to leave their homes. So we've had less need for the shelter than we expected. We expected that to be higher. And then we also have less calls, but the calls are more intense. So I think part of that is because they are probably still in the home with their person who harmed them. So it's very difficult for them to be able to get to a phone and pick up the phone. But when they do, the phone calls are lengthier, as well as more severe, because the need is there. So it's kind of, the numbers have dropped, but the severity has increased.
Yeah, and I'm going to say we have the same as Linda. the shelter services have gone down. And again, it's just because people do not want to leave their apartments, do not want to leave their houses. Right away, the intensity of the phone calls and a lot of domestic violence phone calls. We've always gotten domestic violence phone calls because, you know, people leaving a domestic violence situation can bring their children to us. But, you know, just the child abuse and the domestic violence calls, there was a point where we had to start doing trainings because we don't have an official crisis line. But I used to run a crisis line. And so I had to do kind of a triage training with my staff on how to do, you know, warm handoffs to other agencies. You know, again, with child abuse too, you're seeing the number of calls for child abuse going down, but the incidences of actual violence have gone up. And so really, I think, you know, and Linda can speak to the domestic violence side, but as far as the child abuse side, we used to get phone calls when things started to bubble, right? When parents started to have stressors. We would receive calls, we could kind of get them where they were at a level here. And now we're getting a call where it's to the level here and the child abuse has already occurred. And so, you know, Children and Family Services is also seeing a lot more phone calls. But for us, it's also just been the basic needs. Like we need food, you know, we need diapers, we need clothing, we need rental assistance. This is what people need. And there's been a moratorium on, you know, evictions, but if you're an undocumented, you know, person, right, you're still going to become homeless. You know, you're not going to fight that, you know. So it's been very intense, I think, for a lot of the social service agencies over the past year, and intense for our clients.
Any other questions from anyone? Well, I want to thank both Linda and Tara for being with us. And you have a couple other folks with you too, don't you, that are listening in? Is that Chris and Irina? Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Good to have you with us. And
John, one note too, that the handout that Linda mentioned on, we saw it on the screen, but that handout is in a link that was next to the login to get into the town hall. And we will make that available, Christoph, I'm sure, on the website also.
oh, good, because that's an excellent description of that circle. Good.
Father John, if
Yes.
I have clothing for children that I can, where would I deliver them? That's what I'd like to know.
Tara?
Well, we are only taking new clothing, and that's only because we don't have the ability to wash everything for COVID.
It is
you know,
new
we just don't.
clothing.
Oh,
It's
you can
new
call the
clothing.
nursery. Call the nursery.
Oh,
You can do
call
a
the
porch
nursery.
drop off. Yeah.
Okay,
So it's just 925-685-6633, and I can put it in the chat too.
Perfect.
But yeah, we are doing porch drop offs. We're just doing contact list for everybody. And thank you. We do need clothing.
Good. Well, again, thanks to both of you, and God bless your work and everyone in your agencies, and especially the people that you're caring for.
Thank you.
For everyone else, when we took our little survey about possibly doing a Lenten renewal series on the Wednesdays of Lent, the majority of you said that you would want to do that and would appreciate that. So we are going to do that. Next Wednesday is Ash Wednesday. Can you believe it already? So we are not going to meet next Wednesday because at 8:30 in the morning, there'll be an online prayer service, and then a distribution of ashes at 9:30 in front of the church. And then later in the day at 3:30, 4:30, and 5:30 on the hour, 3:30, 4:30, and 5:30, we'll have a very brief outdoor service in front of the church with a scripture reading, a call to Lenten renewal, and distribution of ashes. Take about 10, 15 minutes. So that's again next Wednesday, 8:30 online, 9:30 in front of the church, and then 3:30, 4:30, and 5:30. Very brief services with distribution of ashes. So then the following Wednesday is when we'll begin the online Lenten renewal service a series on Wednesdays. And for that, it is going to be interactive. So there'll be two periods in the between presentations and the scripture and so on that we will break up into the small, I call them Zoom rooms, probably five participants or 5 screens per room for the chance to reflect either on the presentation that's made or the scripture that's used. So I hope that we will see you at those. I'm looking forward to the chance for some spiritual renewal, especially given these difficult circumstances. You know, in the past, we've done Lenten series together, and we've had soup suppers and so on. But for right now, this is our format. Now, you may have seen in the news that churches have been reopened, and we hope to do that. Right now, I'm planning on that we would continue our Sunday morning 9:30 and 11:30 in the format that we're doing, the Zoom service, and then on a Saturday evening 5 o'clock mass would be in church, but it is for 25% capacity of the worship space with the distancing. So for us in the church, that means about 40 people. And that will be basically first come, first serve. We'll have sign up. You have to sign up and register in order to attend. Because if you show up and the spaces are already filled, that'll can't come in. It's a terrible way to think of church, but for right now. So again, we'll stay with our Sunday morning format, and then hopefully the first Sunday of Lent begin 5 o'clock evening mass, and understanding again with the limitations, there's no singing, it's the 6-foot distance throughout the church and so on. And there'll be more information coming on that in our Timely Perpetuan and this weekend. Also, this weekend, I'll be announcing the beginning of the annual Bishop's Appeal. I was on a Zoom meeting with the diocesan director this few days ago, and there'll be more information coming out about that too. So again, thanks everybody. Good to have you. Good to see you. Have a peaceful night and a blessed rest of the week, and we'll see you on the weekend.
And there will be
Thank you,
Lenten
Linda and
reflection
Tara.
material available this weekend outside the church at the community center. The Lenten table with reflection material will be there for you to come and pick up whatever you like.
Thank you.